So a little update on the whole Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection debacle. This is a re-release or port of old Battlefront Classic games that is not going down particularly well because of all of the technical issues that mar the experience, which has resulted in the review score to drop from a negative to now an overwhelmingly negative at a 19%. Last time I checked, it was like 2,000 some reviews, and the score was sitting at like 20%. Now we have over 5,500 reviews, and that score has dropped a little bit, enough to change the score itself. Overwhelmingly negative, for good reason too, especially where servers are concerned, and the fact that people are having trouble just actually playing the multiplayer component of the series of games 1 and 2, which were beloved by many. Especially back in the day, people were excited and were hoping to see quality of life improvements. Instead, we got a version that is arguably worse than the original releases. It's just really unfortunate, and people are hoping that this will all get sorted out in the long term. In the meantime, though, at launch, people had to contend with the fact that for some reason, when Battlefront 2 launched, it only came with 3 multiplayer servers that each only allowed 64 players. And so when, roughly 10,000 people tried to play the game on launch night, obviously, the vast majority could not play the game, and for those who did manage to get into a match, unfortunately, due to server issues, they suffered severe lag and high ping and stuttering, you name it. This is a product that many will argue in its current state is not worth even its more reasonable $35 cost. Plenty of negative reviews can be found on social media, with people highlighting all of the issues that they've encountered, and outlets sort of taking screenshots and posting about them. On Steam, you'll find plenty of thumbs downs that highlight all of the severe issues that people have been facing and how unacceptable the state of the game is, how it is abundantly clear that this was a rushed product and that it very clearly needed a lot more time in the oven. And Aspyr itself, the developers who, usually are pretty good about their port releases. This is a studio that tends to work more on ports than anything else. And so people were, they had like good hopes for Battlefront Classic Collection. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I'm very curious to hear if there's a story here worth covering that investigative journalists will bring to light. But Aspyr itself, the studio, has acknowledged that we experienced critical errors with our network infrastructure. The result was incredibly high ping, matchmaking errors, crashes, and servers not appearing in the browser. And they're saying right here that they're aware of the issues and that they're working on it. So at least that's something. But it wasn't just about servers and the like. People have been experiencing floaty controls and bare bones options for playing with friends, HUD and UI issues, on top of the fact that for some reason the storage space required for this game is ridiculously large. The original versions of these games only needed 12.39 gigabytes combined. For some reason, this collection, this port, needs, like 5 times that at 62.87 gigabytes, which is not ideal given that, people love to mod Battlefront. And so for so much of that hard drive or solid state drive space to be occupied by the sheer size of a game that shouldn't be this big is very much inconvenient. And so a lot of people are highlighting how, that they're going to need a lot more space to install all of the additional mods on top of this large file size. And then beyond that, speaking of mods themselves have completely been broken by this re-release. As highlighted by this Steam review, this repack breaks most mods for PC, which would be more acceptable if the product itself was a genuine improvement over the original games, if the collection was actually a step up. But many have pointed out how the collection features versions of Battlefront 1 and 2 that are as buggy, if not more so, than the original releases. How can this have more bugs? And the old version asks this question, which is a fair question to ask. The bare minimum you can do when you're porting over old games and trying to remaster them in some way or re-release them in some way is to at the very least make it, as good and a little bit better than what the original was, but to regress and make it a worse product, that's a ripoff. That defeats the whole purpose of an endeavor like this. Might as well just go back to the old versions of the games that worked better if this is the kind of rush job and technical mishap that we can expect from what should be just a better version of what came before. Now, it seems as though Aspyr is working on updates. You can see right here, going to SteamDB, looking at its history of updates, that there are plenty of updates being implemented, and people have been reporting that servers have started to stabilize. So on the official Battlefront subreddit, for example, a number of people have been highlighting how they're already seeing huge improvements in the multiplayer, how servers are starting to run smoothly and the like, and there are more than one post that are saying similar things, and people are saying, okay, well, this is a good start, but it doesn't change the fact that there's still plenty of technical issues, plenty of bugs. And on the modding front, there's been some controversy brewing with people highlighting how this game might be using a mod without the permission of its original creator. This wasn't some kind of collaboration. Rather, if anything, this only further highlights that this was a rush job and the reliance on user-created mods to try to get this thing out and to implement certain things. Like that is just not a good look overall, especially with how disastrous the launch of this collection was. So right here, a Reddit user highlights that Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection Xbox DLC appears to be a stolen mod and not the original DLC. So for those who don't know, the original release of Star Wars Battlefront 2 had a DLC pack that was exclusive to the original Xbox console, which came with 2 heroes, Kit Fisto and Asajj Ventress, as well as 4 maps, and both of these characters had unique animations and movesets. Now, some people did not like the fact that these 2 characters were exclusive to Xbox, so of course, modders came in and tried to take those characters and implement them into the PC version through modding. And this is where this mod comes in. A modder reskinned 2 existing characters in Battlefront 2 Classic to look like Kit Fisto and Asajj Ventress. And so what that meant was that they didn't have those unique animations on PC. They had the same default animations and attacks as the other heroes in this early version of this mod. But the mod was eventually updated so that those animations were very similar, nearly identical to what was implemented in that unique DLC that was exclusive for Xbox. And the reason this is important context is because when people watched the announcement trailer of Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, they noticed that the animations of Kit Fisto and Asajj Ventress were not that of the Xbox exclusive DLC. They were the default animations and attacks as the other heroes. And so it was fairly obvious watching the announcement trailer that Aspyr had used an outdated version of a mod without asking the modder, and just kind of putting that out there as official material. And for those curious, this is the mod in question. You can find this on ModDB. The mod is titled Star Wars Battlefront 2 Xbox DLC Content for PC. This was released all the way back in 2006. Now, the original creator of this mod actually commented on this, going by the username I am Shaman. And scrolling down, you can see the original post noting how I am the author of the Xbox DLC Content for PC mod for Battlefront 2. It is disappointing that they're using some old version of a mod rather than try and do it themselves. They were kind of flattered that their mod was used, and they were always open about the fact that this is open source and anyone can use it. But this was just kind of a sign that something was off behind the scenes if not only did they have to use a mod to implement a feature on an official capacity, but also the fact that they were using an outdated version of that mod. And keep in mind that all of this was from last month, and we're going to get to the current news about the fact that this mod, even though Aspyr put out a statement saying that this was an accident. So right here we have an update from IGN. This is from February 29th, 2024. They put out the following statement saying, "We'd like to thank the passionate Star Wars Battlefront community for bringing this to our attention. When capturing placeholder footage for our announcement last fall, we mistakenly included content that is not in the product, and that mistake made it into the final cut. The upcoming release of Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection does not include any code or content that is taken from uncredited sources." They straight up say right here that the mod was used for testing purposes during development, and that footage of that accidentally made it into the official announcement, and that in the final game, they will not include any code or content that is taken from uncredited sources. So this was their explanation for why they didn't reach out to the modder, why that modder wasn't credited, or why that modder wasn't asked for permission for this mod to be used on an official capacity. So despite saying that in the final game we would not see any signs of this mod, that didn't turn out to be the case. And this is where we get the latest report from March 17th, 2024. A modder has claimed that Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection has used some of his work without permission and without credit. This once again goes back to how the outdated version of this mod had the characters not use the original animations featured on the Xbox exclusive DLC, but rather default animations that were eventually updated with later versions of mods. And so on Reddit 3 days ago, somebody noted that Asajj Ventress doesn't have the original animations featured in the Xbox exclusive DLC. Instead, this is just the default animations you'd see other heroes use. And so what this indicated was that the mod that they said they would not use for the final version of the game, either accidentally or intentionally, it was left in the launch version of the game. And so scrolling down, you'll find the original author of this mod highlighting how, wait, I've seen this before, but I'm not sure where, sarcastically speaking to the fact that it was promised, as you saw here in the IGN statement, that they would not include any code or content that is taken from uncredited sources. Not only did they include that content, but it went uncredited and there was no permission requested for its use. Maybe it was an accident, but either way, it's careless, and it further highlights just how rushed this whole product was. You can feel it in the disastrous technical state, and you can feel it in the fact that things like this were not accounted for, and that things like this kind of slipped by. Now, this was rectified with a patch that came out not long after launch. So, for example, right here we have somebody saying that there's an update that fixes this. Update your game and she'll get new animations, or, the animations from the Xbox exclusive DLC, the animations that these characters are supposed to have. Same thing happened to me before I checked for an update on PS5. You're likely missing the patch, but it doesn't change the fact that, in the original launch version of the game, sans the patch, that mod is in the game, and it is uncredited work, uncredited code that is in the game, even though, it was promised that uncredited work would not make it into the official final product. Now, they've been reached out to comment by numerous outlets like Video Games Chronicle and IGN, but Aspyr has yet to comment. IGN's coverage is significantly more extensive. Not only were they the ones who kind of covered the situation back in February when the mod was noticed in trailers, but they came out with a new article where they directly spoke to the modder about the situation and about just the state of this Battlefront collection in general. So it reads right here, a disgruntled I am a shaman told IGN that they were hugely disappointed by Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. This release has been a total mess. The fact they had to release patches both before and immediately after releasing 2-decade-old games really says it all. Yeah, they're kind of quick-firing hot fixes like they know this thing was not ready for launch. He continues, especially considering part of the patches is rumored to have removed content they had already said was removed months ago, referring to his own mod, which was promised would not be included in the official release and was accidentally put as footage in the game. Turns out that mod was kind of heavily integrated into the code of the game, and they failed to remove it before the official launch. The modder continues by echoing what everyone else is saying, and that it's a terrible feeling getting very pumped for a game like this, and it's just missing the mark entirely. It's a terrible gut punch, and also highlighted how the modding community has been hard at work on trying to fix this game. The modding community surrounding the classic Battlefront games, it's a very dedicated community, so you can imagine their disappointment when they realized that not only were their mods broken with this collection, but that the collection itself was not worth all of the broken mods, given that it's an inferior product compared to the original classics. This modder continues, we were hoping for improvements we could take advantage of to make better, and of course would be ready to port and redevelop our modded content to work with the new games. A lot of players in general were hoping for general bug fixes. Anyway, a few of those bugs are highlighted right here, and apparently one of the bugs was just a result of a simple typo, I guess, in the coding. They couldn't even bother to fix that. Again, an incredibly rushed product if things that modders have already figured out how to fix couldn't be fixed by the developers who were essentially remastering this game or bringing this game to modern consoles and hardware. This modder continues. What we found on release was a very broken game with a lot of issues we have fixed in the past, as well as any mod support for both games being quite badly damaged, although just barely functional for Battlefront 2, whereas with Battlefront 1, all mods are broken now. And that's like kind of the Skyrim situation where it's like, we the modders have fixed this for you, Bethesda, and yet you refuse to implement fixes on official ports and re-releases of this game that is old now that you're cashing out on. And with Battlefront Classic, you don't get like a billion different ports, but it was highly anticipated enough that this package deserved a lot more care and consideration. I mean, the mods were there for you to at least, take inspiration from to fix the issues that should have been fixed with what should have been a better version of the original classics. And yet they just decided to kind of release this broken product, which, yeah, unacceptable. And dedicated communities like modders, they have every right to feel frustrated by this situation that, they were hoping would be a resurgence for something that they love. Instead, it's just this crash landing that shouldn't have happened. I Am a Shaman outlined the sheer volume of problems the modders hope to tackle, multiple issues with the HUD and user interface, and then here's a quote. We also noticed a lot of visual problems as well. Decompiling the files has only shown us even worse horrors. So this is just a mess, not only for consumers, but also for modders who are looking for, just a better package to make even better mods out of this. The collection appears to have broken the original game's lighting model on most maps, which in one case results in a black void. There are more issues. There's invisible or missing geometry, weird issues that are just screaming rush development, says I Am a Shaman. Some textures in the game are even muddled with those from Battlefront 1, like Kashik's water is blue like in Battlefront 1 and not gray like in Battlefront 2, and the DLC maps themselves use completely the wrong textures in a lot of places. This kind of reminds me of the GTA Trilogy Remastered Collection launch, which was this kind of disaster where it just felt like a huge regression from the original games. It broke mod support and introduced issues that weren't there in the originals. This kind of feels like the Battlefront equivalent of that situation. But on top of all that, you've got the fact that this collection, this remastered collection of Battlefront 1 and 2, is less feature complete than the original classics. The modder here mentions how the new versions of these games are missing features from 2 decades ago, like 4-screen split screen, AI-controlled heroes from Xbox, and the PSP challenges. All that stuff the modders have to take care of because there was just a complete lack of consideration when it comes to making this the most feature complete and best package possible for games that are quite old. And this modder also says that this is not even complicated stuff we're talking about. According to them, these are relatively easy fixes when you understand what you're doing, and they believe that Aspyr could quickly fix all of these elements, and that this may further highlight how rushed this game was. The fact that what modders deem to be easy fixes and implementations couldn't be implemented into the official release might very well just paint a clear picture of how little time or manpower, resources, or a combination of these factors, how all of that played into the disaster that ended up being this collection. Hopefully, over the course of the following days and weeks, all of this stuff will be implemented in an official capacity. Aspyr seemingly made some progress when it comes to servers, but when it comes to making this like a stable and neatly kind of released package, that's where, modders are, for them, it's a nightmare to have to navigate this and to have to fix things that shouldn't be their responsibility. They should be adding on top of a solid base, not working on the base itself. A very unfortunate mishap from Aspyr, who usually deliver better work than this. Again, there's gotta be a story behind this that we're just not aware of. The developers clearly were just not given the proper environment to make something that is more akin to a love letter to these beloved games rather than, something that is going to feel insulting to fans of these games, especially when they've waited so long for these classics to receive some kind of modernized love. And so a shame that we're here, but maybe things can work out in the long term. For now, though, the negative press is not going to help this game's player numbers, and it's going to delay the potential that the re-release of these games have. So I guess only time will tell how all this will pan out, but until then, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection debacle. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.